Byron Donalds holds up a budget chart like it's gospel clean lines, neat cuts, perfect balance. Efficiency isn't cruelty, he says. It's common sense. The room nods. The machine hums. But Jasmine Crockett doesn't blink. She opens a manila folder packed with government reports evidence nobody wants read out loud. "Let's talk about what you really cut," she says as the screen behind her flickers to life. 12 states, 112,000 medical appointments gone. One by one, the clinics vanish, the names disappear, and the math gets cleaner. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. Because in her hands is a photograph, an old man in a waiting room at 3:47 a.m., his cane shaking, waiting for care that no longer exists. And then she says it. You didn't eliminate waste. You amputated care. Stay. Watch what happens when the numbers add up, but the people disappear. The fluorescent lights of Committee Room 2154 hum with the electric tension of impending confrontation. Byron Donalds sits with the practiced composure of a man who has never questioned his own righteousness. His hands folded over a leather portfolio embossed with the congressional seal. The portfolio contains charts, clean lines, ascending graphs, the beautiful mathematics of fiscal conservatism rendered in PowerPoint perfection. Efficiency isn't cruelty, he declares, his voice carrying the smooth certainty of campaign rhetoric. It's common sense. The words float across the mahogany table like incense sanctifying the ritual of budget cuts with the blessing of necessity. Committee members nod, staffers scribble. The familiar choreography of government unfolds with rehearsed precision. Donalds continues his gestures, theatrical yet controlled. Every redundant program eliminated is a victory for the taxpayer. Every streamlined operation is a step toward responsible governance. But at the far end of the table, Jasmine Crockett sits motionless as stone. Her fingers rest flat against a manila folder thick enough to choke on its edges worn from handling. She doesn't nod at Donalds's words. She doesn't smile at his promises. She simply watches him with the patient intensity of a surgeon studying a tumor before the first incision. The camera would linger here if cameras could capture the weight of accumulated evidence, the gravity of truth waiting to be unleashed. Her stillness is not passive, but coiled like a prosecutor who has spent months building an airtight case, and now watches the defendant dig his own grave with every confident word. Donalds concludes with a flourish about fiscal responsibility and government waste, his voice rising to meet the applause that ripples through the gallery. He settles back in his chair, satisfied, while the committee chair turns toward Crockett with the weary expression of a referee who knows the real fight is about to begin. Representative Crockett, your opening statement. She doesn't stand immediately. Instead, she opens the manila folder with the deliberate precision of someone unsealing evidence in a murder trial. The papers inside are thick official marked with seals and signatures that carry the weight of institutional authority. The Government Accountability Office logo appears on every page like a watermark of truth. When she finally speaks, her voice cuts through the chamber's ambient noise with surgical clarity. I want to talk about efficiency too, Mr. Chairman. But first, I want to show this committee what happens when we actually achieve it. The transformation begins with numbers because numbers are the language of government, the currency of policy, the ammunition of political warfare. Crockett's fingers trace columns of data as she speaks, each statistic a small detonation in the chamber's carefully maintained calm. 12 states, last fiscal year. Combined budget cuts of 4.2% to Medicaid and community health programs. Her voice maintains an almost clinical detachment, as if she's reading autopsy results rather than budget figures. They called it lean government. They called it eliminating redundancy. The large screen behind her flickers to life, displaying a map of the United States with 12 states highlighted in red. The image is clean abstract, sanitized, the kind of visualization that makes policy seem inevitable rather than chosen. The Government Accountability Office released this report 3 weeks ago. She continues holding up the document like evidence in a courtroom. 112,000 medical appointments canceled, eliminated, disappeared into the efficiency machine. The word disappeared hangs in the air, with particular weight carrying echoes of darker histories, other lists, other names that vanish from official records in service of someone else's vision of order. The screen changes. 2 photographs side by side, the same rural health clinic captured in different seasons of its existence. In the first image, elderly patients walk through the entrance of a modest building. Cars fill the parking lot. Life moves with the quiet rhythm of community care. In the second photograph, the same building stares back with plywood eyes, weeds growing through cracks in the pavement like vegetation reclaiming abandoned ruins. Millbrook Community Health Center, Arkansas. 3,400 patients annually. Eliminated for efficiency. Another slide. Another death certificate disguised as a budget line item. Riverside Family Clinic, Mississippi. 2,100 patients. Redundant, apparently. Donald shifts in his seat, his leather portfolio creaking softly. Representative Crockett, if I may interject. You may not. The words emerge with the finality of a gavel strike. Because I'm not finished showing this committee what your efficiency looks like in the real world. The next image fills the screen, a letter on official letterhead, formal language wrapped around devastating content like silk around a blade. The camera would zoom here, focusing on phrases that transform lives with bureaucratic precision. Regret to inform you. Services no longer available. Seek alternative care arrangements. Mrs. Dorothy Williams, 73 years old, diabetic, received this letter on a Tuesday morning while drinking coffee at her kitchen table. Crockett's voice drops to just above a whisper, forcing the chamber to lean forward, to strain to hear truth spoken softly. The nearest clinic, accepting Medicaid patients, is now 87 miles from her home. She doesn't drive at night anymore. Her daughter works 2 jobs and can't take time off. She hasn't had her blood sugar checked in 4 months. The silence that follows is different from the polite quiet of parliamentary procedure. This silence has weight texture, the dense gravity of recognition settling over minds that had preferred not to know these details. But the budget balanced beautifully. Crockett continues, her tone now carrying the subtle edge of controlled fury. The numbers looked perfect on paper, very efficient. The screen changes again, this time displaying video testimony that carries the grain and intimacy of someone's living room, rather than the sterile polish of official proceedings. An elderly woman sits in a worn armchair, her hands trembling slightly as she speaks to an unseen interviewer. "My name is Alice Hartwell, and I live in Cartersville, Georgia. Used to be I could walk to the clinic when my arthritis got bad. 20 minutes even with the hip that don't work right anymore." Her voice carries the particular exhaustion of someone who has spent a lifetime expecting little and receiving less, each word weighted with the accumulated disappointment of promises broken by people she'll never meet. "Now the closest place that takes my insurance is 137 miles. My neighbor Betty drove me once. 4 hours round trip plus waiting for the doctor cost us $47 in gas money." The camera would hold on Crockett's face here, capturing the way she watches this testimony while simultaneously monitoring Donalds's reaction like a chess player executing a strategy that requires perfect timing. "Betty can't do it every month. She's got her own troubles, so I just make do. Take half my pills to stretch them out. Hope the Lord sees fit to keep me going." The video ends, leaving only the soft hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic beyond the committee room's thick walls. In this silence, individual heartbeats become audible, the biological rhythm underlying all political discourse. "Mrs. Hartwell called my office last Thursday," Crockett says quietly. "She wanted to know if there was anything Congress could do. I had to tell her that her clinic was closed for efficiency, that the funding for her care was eliminated to streamline government operations." She stands now, moving away from the table's formal geometry, closer to the gallery where citizens sit watching their representatives debate their survival. But I didn't stop there. I asked our staff to investigate further. You know what they found. In the same fiscal year that Georgia cut $12 million from community health programs, they increased defense contractor payments by $340 million. This is the moment when Donalds's careful composure begins to crack, when the mathematics of his argument start to reveal their underlying logic. He leans forward, his voice carrying the sharp edge of someone whose narrative is being hijacked. Representative, those are entirely separate budget categories with fundamentally different, separate priorities. She interrupts, her voice now projecting across the chamber with the clarity of someone who has been waiting for exactly this moment. "I know. That's precisely the point I'm making." She turns to face him directly, abandoning the pretense of addressing the committee chair, transforming the formal hearing into something more primal. A confrontation between competing visions of governance. "We cut the clinic. We kept the contracts. We eliminated Mrs. Hartwell's diabetes care but preserved Lockheed Martin's profit margins. That's not reform, Congressman Donalds. That's surrender disguised as stewardship." That's anecdotal evidence being manipulated to, "So, is death?" She cuts him off with surgical precision. "But it's still real. It still counts. It still matters to the people who die waiting for care that efficiency eliminated." The exchange hangs in the chamber's air like gunpowder smoke after a duel, acrid and revealing. Crockett returns to her position behind the table, but she doesn't sit. Instead, she retrieves another document from her folder, this one even thicker than the GAO report, its pages marked with the kind of sticky notes and margin annotations that suggest obsessive study. Since we're discussing efficiency, let me share some additional numbers that might interest this committee. She flips through pages with the practiced ease of someone who has memorized every damning statistic. While Medicaid funding decreased by $2.3 billion across these 12 states, federal contracts in the same regions increased by $3.4 billion. The screen displays two bar charts side by side, one showing healthcare spending in decline, the other revealing contractor payments ascending like a fever chart. The visual is stark, undeniable, the kind of evidence that transforms political arguments into mathematical proofs. Management consulting fees rose by $700 million. Information technology contracts increased by $1.2 billion. Military contractor payments expanded by $1.6 billion. She looks directly at Donalds, her gaze carrying the weight of accumulated research, the authority of someone who has done her homework, while others relied on talking points. Fascinating definition of efficiency, Congressman. We eliminated the nurse practitioner earning $65,000 annually to serve rural patients, but we preserved the defense consultant billing $400 per hour to optimize filing systems that were already functioning adequately. Donalds' response comes faster, now tinged with the desperation of someone whose carefully constructed narrative is collapsing in real time. Representative Crockett. Those represent entirely separate budget priorities serving fundamentally different governmental functions. Separate realities. She corrects her voice, cutting through his explanation like a scalpel through tissue. That's exactly correct. In your reality, government is dangerously bloated when it helps Mrs. Hartwell monitor her blood pressure. But it's perfectly sized when it pays Boeing to redesign the same aircraft for the 15th consecutive time. The chamber erupts in murmurs, staffers frantically scribbling notes, the committee chair gaveling for order with increasing urgency. But Crockett continues speaking through the chaos, her voice rising to meet the moment. In your version of efficient government redundancy means having 2 clinics serving 40,000 people across 3 counties. But it's essential efficiency to employ 12 different contractors providing cybersecurity assessments to the same Pentagon office. She moves closer to the microphone, her voice now carrying the intimate intensity of someone sharing a dangerous secret. You want to eliminate Waystart with the $2 million we spent last year hiring consultants to recommend cutting healthcare spending. That's not lean government, Congressman. That's moral bankruptcy masquerading as financial responsibility. When the gaveling finally restores order, Crockett's voice is the only sound in the chamber, each word dropping into silence like stones into still water. No one cuts the contractor, only the caretaker. The final slide that appears on the screen behind her is not a chart or graph or budget projection. It's a photograph that transforms the entire chamber's energy, that shifts the debate from abstract policy to visceral reality. An elderly man sits alone in a hospital waiting room. At 3:47 a.m., according to the timestamp, his clothes clean, but worn, his gnarled hands resting on a wooden cane that has clearly supported him through many difficult journeys. This is Robert Martinez. Crockett says, her voice now stripped of rhetoric, carrying only the weight of human truth. 78 years old. Retired mechanic, lives in Tucumcari, New Mexico. End-stage kidney disease requiring dialysis 3 times weekly to remain alive. She pauses, allowing the image to settle into the consciousness of everyone present, allowing the abstract concept of efficiency to acquire a face, a name, a specific address in the American landscape. For 6 years, Mr. Martinez received treatment at High Plains Dialysis Center, 12 miles from his home. A manageable distance even for an elderly man whose body was slowly failing him. The slide changes. Same man, different context. This time he's visible through the rear window of an aging pickup truck, an oxygen tank beside him, his face drawn with the particular exhaustion of someone fighting both disease and distance. High Plains was eliminated last January, closed for efficiency. Mr. Martinez now travels 127 miles each direction for the dialysis that keeps him alive. His nephew drives when he can secure time away from work, when he cannot. She doesn't complete the sentence. The silence completes it for her, filling in the blanks with implications too stark for official language. Mr. Martinez has missed 14 treatments in the past 6 months. His physicians report that his condition is deteriorating rapidly. But the budget balanced perfectly. The books closed cleanly. The efficiency metrics were achieved. Crockett abandons the podium entirely now, walking slowly toward the gallery, toward the cameras, toward anyone willing to witness what efficiency looks like when it acquires a human face. You want to discuss the mathematics of letting Robert Martinez die slowly in the back of a pickup truck on Highway 54? Let me explain the calculations for you. Her voice rises, now controlled but passionate, carrying the accumulated frustration of someone who has spent months documenting preventable suffering. It's efficient because dead patients don't require dialysis appointments. It's efficient because buried citizens don't file insurance claims. It's efficient because when you eliminate the service completely, you eventually eliminate the need for it. She turns back toward Donalds, toward the committee, toward the institutional machinery that creates these realities with the stroke of budget pens and the approval of efficiency studies. You didn't trim governmental fat congressmen. You performed surgery on living tissue. You didn't eliminate waste. You amputated care. You took a scalpel to the federal budget and called it responsible governance, but what you actually accomplished was a slow-motion execution of the people who needed help most. The chamber has become a vacuum of sound, even the air conditioning seeming to pause in deference to the weight of accumulated truth. Crockett returns to her position at the table, placing both hands flat against its surface, leaning forward with the intensity of someone delivering a final verdict. Efficiency means more resources for fewer people. Justice means adequate resources for everyone who needs them. She sits finally, the manila folder closing with a whisper that seems to echo in the chamber's silence, like the sound of a coffin lid settling into place. The committee chair clears his throat, struggling to restore parliamentary normalcy to a moment that has transcended procedural boundaries. Are there any further questions? I have one question. Crockett interrupts, her eyes locked on Donalds's face with laser intensity. When you return home tonight, when you kiss your children goodnight, when you check on your aging parents, will you remember that every budget cut has a human face? That every program elimination carries someone's name, that every efficiency achievement requires someone else to pay the price with their health, their hope, their life. The camera would hold on Donalds's face for an extended moment, capturing the way his mouth opens as if to respond before closing again, the way his carefully prepared talking points dissolve under the weight of questions that have no comfortable answers. The hearing room empties with the slow reluctance of people processing information they wish they hadn't learned. Staffers pack briefcases with unusual quiet. Committee members file through side doors without their typical post-hearing conversations. The gallery disperses like mourners leaving a funeral. But Crockett remains seated, staring at the now blank screen where Robert Martinez's photograph had been projected, her hands resting on the closed GAO report like a mourner touching a gravestone. In the chamber's emptying silence, her voice speaks again, not to anyone present, but to the larger audience that extends beyond these walls. When they promise efficiency, ask them to define the terms. When they guarantee lean government, ask them who starves. When they offer streamlined services, ask them who dies waiting for care that efficiency eliminated. The screen fades to complete darkness, then displays white text against the black background. 112,000 appointments canceled. Names removed from lists. Zero accountability maintained. The efficiency continues. In the final image, the committee room sits empty except for Crockett's folder, still closed, still containing more evidence than anyone wants to examine. The fluorescent lights continue humming their electric song, illuminating empty chairs and abandoned water glasses, the debris of democracy attempting to function in the face of carefully calculated indifference. The efficiency machine rolls on its gears, turning with mathematical precision, its calculations perfect, its human cost invisible to everyone except those who pay it.